Hey guys, it's Evan from Interrobang Tarot, and I am answering AMAs from Discord. And we got a great question about what's the deal with justice and strength with the 8-11 thing, and why do I have those two as interchangeable in one of my decks? So we're going to do a whole video on this topic because it goes back on a romp through tarot history. This actually tags up some juicy historical tidbits and factoids for the nerds in the crowd. I meant to talk about this in the guidebook, and I might have forgotten to. I know I drafted something about it, and I don't know if that section actually made it into the final book. I can't remember. That might have slipped. That might have slipped the book. All right, so in my books and decks, I have Justice as the 8th card in the Black Ink Tarot and Strength as the 11th. And then in the Interrobang Tarot deck, they're both marked with an 8/11 so that they are interchangeable. Why is that? So to understand the reason why, first we need the broader context of tarot's age and history and just the fact that it's gone through several major reinventions over the course of time. So tarot as we know it stretches back to Renaissance Italy. One of the first known tarot decks is the Visconti Sforza deck, which was commissioned by the Visconti Sforza family in Renaissance Italy, and they were a wealthy aristocratic family. And as far as we know, the earliest known use of tarot was for gambling play. It was a card game, and a very fine and pretty illuminated gilded accessory to have around the house and impress your guests and show off. So as tarot evolved over time and gained in popularity and became associated with mysticism and fortune telling, it's gone through several major revisions. One of the big tarot booms was the Marseille printing boom in France around the 1700s, and that's one of the earliest known examples of it getting really popularized as a divination game and a tool for fortune telling. I don't think all of the majors that we have today and use today were present in the original decks. So there has been some evolution of exactly which cards were included and some expansion of that over time. But around by the Marseille period, tarot had a lot of the structure that it still has today, especially in the major arcana. It's a lot of the same archetypes, and they go in a specific order. So their historical order was 8 for justice and 11 for strength. That changed in the Victorian period with the English school. And that was the Golden Dawn camp. Arthur Edward Waite wrote the text for a book on tarot and commissioned Pamela Colman Smith to do the illustrations. And that became the what was for a long time known as the Rider-Waite Tarot, named after the author and the publisher, and the female illustrator who did most of the work on the deck was not even credited or widely known until fairly recently. In the 2000s, credit for her work has been restored to her. Oh, I guess we're more in Edwardian times than Victorian now. It was published in the early 1907 or something. Let me look up the exact date. Early 1900s. So the Golden Dawn was active late 1800s, early 1900s. I'm just going to check my facts here. I'm really bad with dates. Okay, yes, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn was founded in 1888, so there is a Victorian bit there. But the Smith-Waite deck was first published 1909. Okay. 1909. So early, before 1910. The Rider-Waite deck was published, now often called the Smith-Waite, to credit Pamela Colman Smith, who did the illustrations. So the Golden Dawn flipped strength and justice in their system because that worked better with their particular system of astrological correspondences, which modern readers may or may not even use. A lot of people don't actually strictly follow the Golden Dawn astrological correspondences anymore, but that is the reason why they associated justice with Libra and strength with Leo, and they wanted them to be in a particular order astrologically. So you do still see that influence the Libra and Leo thing on the cards themselves, but the ordering is more modern, and that is a convention that traces specifically to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So that was their system, but that deck launched a gazillion copycats. So that became the template. Pamela Coleman Smith was one of the earliest illustrators to do the entire minor arcana with pictorial faces. There is an older Renaissance deck, the Solobusca deck, which does have pictorial minors too, but they're not all the same. And Pamela Coleman Smith was the first illustrator to flesh them out and do completely pictorial images for the entire minor arcana. And that really revolutionized tarot, and that also, like I said, launched a gazillion copycats. We call them Rider-Waite or Smith-Waite clones. So because the Smith-Waite deck became the template for so many modern decks, a lot of readers do still use the Golden Dawn system of ordering the cards in that particular order, with strength first and justice later in the majors. But that is a more contemporary convention. It's more Victorian in its origins, and it is kind of specific to this one magical practice. So when I was designing my decks and working out my own system of explanations and readings, I realized that for myself, I strongly prefer the older method of reading justice as the 8th card and strength as the 11th. I find that makes more intuitive sense to me in a narrative sense, and in the context of like what are the other cards on either side of that and what those groups of cards are doing in a storytelling sense. So I prefer the narrative flow of the pre-Smith-Waite way of ordering them when I'm reading the majors in order, which again, when you're shuffling up the cards in a reading, it doesn't really matter as much unless you're also working with numerology or astrological correspondences for some reason, which you might well be doing. So in my decks and in my system, I wanted to include some flexibility there for people who were using different schools. So you'll sometimes hear experienced readers talk about tarot schools and those historical time periods where tarot got radically changed from what it had been before. Those styles of reading still persist to this day, and they're called schools. So the Marseille style of reading is the French school. The Golden Dawn style of reading is the English school. There's also Crowley's deck and the Thoth Tarot, and that's kind of its own school. And I would really count the contemporary hipster tarot revolution that we're currently in. I think this is kind of its own school, but it's a lot less codified and more anarchic. You've got this incredible boom of independent publishing, and indie authors from much more diverse backgrounds than was historically possible are now creating their own decks and systems, and a lot of them depart in really significant ways from historical decks. So I think we've got kind of a chaotic hodgepodge new school forming now with the current tarot renaissance that we are in, but it's not organized and it's not labeled yet. But yeah, I think there's a kind of like modern indie hipster school emerging. So I wanted my decks to be versatile. Basically, when I was designing them, I was thinking a lot about people who would be coming to these decks from different backgrounds, and also at different stages in their tarot journeys. I wanted the decks to be versatile for people who were new, but also have a lot to offer people who are experienced. And knowing that people who've been in tarot for a long time might gravitate to some of those alternative schools, knowing that I prefer the historical ordering of the majors, but that goes against the majority of the decks on the market now, I felt like I needed some flexibility there for people to be able to switch those orders within their systems if they want to, especially if they are working with the additional layers of numerology or astrology or a historic body of work that they're referencing, more of a traditional style of reading. So that's why they're numbered the way they are. And then in the book, you will see Justice appear in the narrative before Strength does. And that is significant in my style of reading, especially the way that I approach reversals. So, yeah, that'll make more sense in the context of the book. But that is why they are the way they are. You can actually find a fair bit online for free from the Golden Dawn on places like sacredtexts.com. You can read those original writings about the Smith-Waite Tarot from their authors. There's a lot of resources online, and there's also books that are written specifically about each tradition and style of tarot reading. If you're interested in learning more about tarot schools, I would recommend picking up some books that specialize in particular styles of reading, like the Marseille method, like the Golden Dawn method, or like Crowley. And then as far as contemporary decks go, it's very very mixed and diverse, and that's gonna depend on what author and deck designer you're reading and looking at. So yeah, fun stuff. It is okay to draw from different tarot schools for inspiration too, as you're developing your voice and developing your style. So I have been influenced a little bit by the Marseille method, though most of the books that I learned from focus more on the English school tradition. Most beginner to intermediate tarot books on the market are going to follow after the ones that are written in English. In the States and probably in England too. English-speaking markets, most of the tarot books that you're going to get at the beginner and intermediate level are going to be written just assuming that we're working with the Smith-Waite, after the Smith-Waite tradition. So a lot of the stuff is geared more towards that. That's kind of like the default in this region. But yeah, I have been influenced a little bit by the Marseille school, and a lot by other contemporary authors that kind of do their own thing. Not every reader orders the cards the same way. But I wanted people from different backgrounds to still be able to work with these decks. The Interrobang deck particularly. So the black ink deck, I just picked one. I picked, I'm going to order Justice first and Strength after, and it's a throwback to the historical order. But the Interrobang deck specifically, I really wanted that one to be versatile, because that deck is designed to do very different things depending on whether you're a beginner or whether you're an intermediate to advanced practitioner. So if you're a beginner, that deck works more as like flashcards. The symbols are very easy to memorize, but they tag in multiple layers of meaning that should function like a mnemonic device. So really simple and bare bones on the surface, but it's going to x-ray right down to the building blocks of symbol behind the tarot archetypes. So it's a memorization aid if you're new. If you're more experienced working with tarot, that deck is designed basically as a psychic aid to reduce and quell the noise. So it strips way down to basics, and the intention is for it to be as much like a sensory deprivation tank as you can get to within a tarot card. They were inspired a lot by those funky little was it Zayner cards? What are they called? The little psychic practicing your psi abilities cards with like the wavy lines and the circles. They're in Ghostbusters. They're like these funny little cards from the 60s with these really minimal glyph shapes on them. So I was inspired by those because I wanted the deck to function as a psi aid, where basically the deck itself is super quiet. The borders distinguish the majors, minors, and courts apart at a glance. The picture on the face of the cards is just this bare bones minimalist line art. So that's to generate your own mental pictures and your own yeah, your own sigh and creative visioning stuff. Just cut the noise and get your own stuff coming to the surface. So if you're coming at it from that angle of like, all right, I've been reading tarot for however many years, I already have the card meanings memorized, I've got multiple layers of association with each card, I've got like 10 to 20 different decks already memorized and in my head, and I just want something to like quiet down and cut the noise and have my own visions and my own text coming to the surface. For those readers, I know that some of you all are going to be coming after the Golden Dawn, some of you all are going to be coming after Marseille, and some of you all are going to be coming from your own systems. So it should be right on there at the surface that those two cards in particular are interchangeable depending on what system you're working with on any given day. And then also, you guys are free to reorder things as you prefer according to your own systems and your own methods. These tools are for working. Adapt them as you may and as you will. All right, so I think that is plenty on that topic. And if you have any juicy questions, anything you'd like to know about tarot in general, or any of the creative processes that I work with, you can throw those questions at me in the comments below, or come join our Discord and Patreon communities, and you can throw me questions there. And if I get juicy questions, I might do a video on it when I get a minute. So, yeah. Thanks for watching. Happy reading and take care, guys. Cheers.